Alright, so now let's talk about Blind SQL Injection. So I'm going to use DVWA. As I said, it stands for Damn Web Vulnerable Application. So we're going to exploit a blind SQL injection bug on this application. So the Docker image of this is also available. You could just search for DVWA Docker and you would get this page. So you just have to pull that image and then use this command to run the container and expose the port to 80. So the default username and password is admin and password. So there you go. These are all the vulnerabilities that this web application contains. So we're going to talk about SQL injection blind. So this page right here is said to contain an SQL injection, a blind SQL injection vulnerability. So let's try to exploit that. So first of all, this seems like a user ID field and there's a submit button. So if I just type in some number, let's say 1, and I click submit, it says user ID exists in table. If I say 2, the same. So basically if I give a number that exists in the database, it's going to say that it is existing in the database. Otherwise it's going to say it's missing from the database. So if I just give it a single quote and I'm going to intercept this with burf and click submit. Okay, so this is the get request that we are sending. I'm just going to send this to repeater, and here you go. This is the request. So instead of 1, I'm going to give it a single quote and click send, and it returns saying that user ID is missing from the database. So okay, I'm just going to add an or 1 equal to 1 and then commenting out the rest of the statement. So let's send this now. And it still says that the user ID is missing from the database. Now, as I already said, we are not going to get any error message. We are only going to get either the user ID exists in the database or it is missing from the database. We are not going to get an error message. So yeah, it's quite complicated to deal with blind SQL injection techniques for this reason. So fortunately for DVWA, you could actually look at the source code by clicking on this button. So let's look at the source code to see what is the SQL query used. So this is the SQL query right here. It says select first name, last name from users where user ID equal to, and then the ID, the submitted ID, which is enclosed between single quotes. So what we can do is to test if this is actually vulnerable to SQL injection, to the blind SQL injection. What we can do is instead of all this thing, first I'm going to escape the single quote by typing in a single quote here, and then I'm going to say I'm going to give a condition, right? Try or 1 equal to 1, but this time I'm not going to include any comment because there's no additional statement after that. So let's see that it still says user ID is missing from the database. Cool. If I just include a single quote followed by 2 comments, that means I am first closing the opening quote and then I'm commenting out the rest of it. The rest of the statement should be this thing, which is a single quote and a semicolon. So if I send this, it should return saying that the user ID exists in the database because 1 is existing in the database. But it still says that user ID is missing from the database, which means that is not the way we want to do it. All right, so I think I know what I'm doing wrong here. So instead of this dash, I'm going to change this comment character to hash, hash. Yeah, and if I click send, there you go. User ID exists in the database. Great. So the reason why it did not work earlier is because we are using dash to start a comment. But in this case, whatever database this is using, the comment character is hash and not dash. And that's why it did not work. So now we know that this is actually exploitable. This form, this whatever you call this thing is vulnerable to SQL injection. So now we can do something else. We could inject a predefined SQL function, something like that, to see if it reflects. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the sleep function. All right, so let me browse. Yeah, whatever. So you could just say select sleep and followed by Is this the seconds or is this in milliseconds? Okay, I think it's in seconds, not milliseconds. So I can just say, maybe and sleep of, let's say I want to sleep for 5 seconds. And also I need to comment out the rest of this thing. So I'll put a hash there. And if I click send, you could see that we did not get a response. Now we got it. So it obviously took a little more delay to show us the response, which means our sleep function here actually worked. It means that on the back end, our sleep function is executed, which made it to sleep for 5 seconds. So that's why we got a delayed response. The response is delayed by 5 seconds. And that's why, like, even if you change this to 10 seconds, now it should be even more delayed. So if I click send again, count to 10, guys, count to 10. And only after you count to 10, you will get the response from the web server. As you could see, it still has not appeared, and now it did. So the delay is 10 seconds. So there you go. That means we have successfully found out this, this bug. So yep, that means we were able to successfully execute our sleep function on the web server. So let's see, what else can we do? What else can we actually do? Can we get details about the database? Let's say, can we get the version number of this database, of whatever database is? I think it's MySQL, but yeah. So how do we do that? I don't know, but wait a minute. I just want to okay, so it does show that the backend database is MySQL, which is good to know, because now we know what to search for. We want to search for MySQL queries, right? So I'm going to search for MySQL get database version. I want to get the database version number. So we could just say select version, I guess, and that's going to select the version, get the version number. But what is the difference between these two? This works for me on Debian and Windows. Okay, we could use either of these statements. We'll use the first one because it doesn't contain any other special characters. So yeah, so let's do that. How do we actually try to include this in our query? Let's think about that. So what if you say and followed by select version equal to 1 hashtag. So I'm not sure if this works, but let's see if it works. So it says user ID is missing from the database. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to get the version number, which I think is going to be in string. Oh yeah, so I have to substring it and do the rest. So what I can do is first I will use a substring function. What is the substring function in MySQL? Substring in MySQL. How do I use that substring function in MySQL? So it says substring 53. This is the starting index. This is the what? Okay, starting and the length. Okay. So what I can do is I can say select, okay, first I have to say substring, and inside the substring I'll say select version, which is going to select the current database version, and the response or the return value is going to be in string. So I have to remember that, and we have to substring that with the starting. The start is, I think it starts from index 0 if I'm not wrong. So we want index 0 and the length to be 1. So we are basically getting the first character. In this case, it's going to be digit, right? And we're going to check if this is equal to let's say we start with 1. All right, and we also make sure that it ends with a hashtag, so we comment out the rest of the query. So I click on send and it says it's missing. So let's change this to 2. Maybe it starts with 2. Missing again. 3. What about 3? Missing again. 4. Missing again. Okay, so the reason it did not work is that apparently when it comes to substring function in MySQL, the index starts from 1 and not from 0. So that is a mistake I did. So based on that, now if I want to craft my SQL query, it should look like this. First, I close the single quote and then I say and, followed by substring, which is the substring function. And in the substring function, I want to find out the database version. So I'll pass in the the version function, which will return the current version of the database. And then followed by the start of the string, which is 1, and the length, which is 1. So I'm going to check if this thing is equal to, first I'll check if this thing is equal to 1. And finally, obviously, we also need to comment out the rest of the query. So I'll end this with a comment. Fine. So I'll replace this with this one now. And let's see if it works. I'm also going to URL encode it so I don't face any issue. So if I send it, so it says that the user ID actually exists in database. So what this means is that this whole query returned a true, which means this function is true. The substring of version, which means the first character of the database version, is equal to 1. And to cross check that, if I change this to 2, it should give me the message that the user ID does not exist in the table. If I come down, there you go. It says user ID is missing from the database. So this means that we are sure that the first character in the version, in the database version, is 1. So it starts with 1 point something. So we know that, right? So using the same process, now let's move on and let's try to find out the rest of the version number. So now it's time to find out the second character. So I'll change this value to 2, and now I will see actually the version number goes something like let's say 1.2.1, something like this. So there's a dot. So the dot is typically going to be the second character in this case. So I will check that. So for the second character, I want to check if this is going to be a dot. And if I send this, hopefully, okay, it says user ID is missing from the table. Okay, that's a bummer. I was pretty sure that it's going to be a dot, but maybe it is 1 or 0. Let's check for 0 again. Okay, so for 0 it says user ID exists in the database. So until now we know that the first character is 1, the second character is 0. Now let's go ahead and find out the third character in the same way. I'll replace it with 3, and I want to check if the third character is equal to, let's check if it's equal to dot this time. So if I send it, okay, so there you go, user ID exists in the table. So it goes like 10 point. So in the same way, we can find out the rest of the version number. And yeah, I know it's like a trial and error brute forcing method. So you can write a simple Python script. So I'm going to name it automate.py. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to simply import requests to send that requests. And what is the URL we want? The URL goes like http:// localhost 4444, and then followed by this thing right here. And it's going to be mod s. So essentially we want to replace this with our input. So I'm just going to give it a format specifier there. And then we also have submit equal to. So we need this one as well, this parameter as well. So let's do that. So now we have the vulnerable URL to test, and it's time we go ahead and write something so that it can automatically brute force to find out the whole version of that thing. So first of all, let me craft the SQL query which I want to execute. The query goes like this. This is the this is the query that we want to craft. So I'll just store that. So I'll just store that in a variable. Okay, so there you go. So let me go ahead and try to run this file right now. So I'll say python automate.py and let's see. Okay, so it has no attribute get. I think this is in small letters. So let's try again. Okay, so we got something. Oh yeah, I forgot, like we should also include these cookie values. Alright, so the reason it did not work is because I was not using my cookies when I'm sending the request. So now I imported all my cookies and I'm also including them when I'm sending the request. So now it should work. So let me go ahead and run this script now. It's python automate.py and now we got a response. And here you could see we got an appropriate response because there is a string that says user ID exists in the database. So we know that we are at least getting the response that we want, right? So now we can get the version number character by character by brute forcing. I'll first create a list that says characters and I'll say str of I for I in range 0, 10. So I'm basically getting all the digits from 0 to 9 and then I'm converting them into string and storing it into this list. And I also want the character dot because we know that the version number string is going to contain a dot. So I'm going to also append dot to it. Now we have to go through each of these characters and check if we are getting an appropriate response for each of these characters. If you are getting the response that that says that the user ID exists, it means that the character belongs to the version string. Also in this query, this one is a variable. It's not going to always stay 1. This is actually the current character that we are dealing with. So I'll just replace this with a format specifier for integer format. For time's sake, I'm just going to comment out this URL lib encoding. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start a while loop, an infinite while loop. And inside this, okay, I'm also going to say current character and I'm going to like give it a value 1 because we're going to start from the first character. And inside this while loop, I'm going to say for I in characters. So I'm going through each of the characters in this characters list. And I am going to first craft a query. So let's say temp query is equal to, and then for the query, I'm giving first one, the current character, and then also this one should also be a variable. So I'm gonna put it as mod s, and then I'm gonna give it as I. So what we are doing basically is in this query string, we are replacing this value with the current character and this value with I. I is nothing but that particular character in the chars list. The chars list contains the digits 0 to 9 and then also the dot. Okay. So now what do we do? So now I think we need to like URL encode it first. So I'm going to just say temp query is equal to URL encode that temp query. So now I'm gonna bring this in request.get. Now I have to check if the string missing does not exist in r.text, which is the raw response text. I'm just going to create a new res variable as an empty string, and I'm going to like add it the new character like that. And also I'm going to say char added as a boolean, and I'm going to call this as true just to keep note of whether a new character is added in that whole iteration of that for loop. And then I'm also going to go break if this is the case, because once we find that particular character, we do not want to keep checking because we already found that particular character. So we're going to break outside of it. And also if character added is false, so if not character added, then it means that we did not add a character in this for loop. So that means we reached the end of the string, end of the version string. In that case, we just want to break out of the for loop. And finally, we also need to like increment the char added variable so that we are dealing with next character as well. So I think this is a wrong spelling. Oh, sorry, not character added, it's actually current character. So it's current character plus 1. Yeah, and I guess that should do. So I'm going to print final result, and I'm going to print out response. And just for debugging, I'm going to say print checking and then res plus I. So just to know which character we are actually checking at that point, I'm adding that string right now. So I think that should work. Oops. So now let's go ahead and run that script, python automate.py. Okay, so obviously we have some syntax error, str of I. Okay, I don't need I here. Got it. And let's do it again. Okay, so it's not working. It's only checking for zeros. So that's definitely not working. But why? So actually I made a mistake. This is not query, it's temp query. And I think now it should work. So, oh, there you go. It did not take much time. So it went through each character in the version string and it checked it from the list of characters, and the final result what we got is 10.1.26, which is the version of our database. So yeah, we finally got it. And using the same technique, you could also dump the data inside tables, but obviously it's going to take a lot more time and it's a lot more complicated process because we can't directly get whatever we need from the database. As you just saw, we need to get the data character by character by making use of conditions in the SQL query. And also, I did not have to write this code to automate this process. I could just use SQL map to automate it. Just like how I used it for the error-based SQL injection, I could, in the same way, get the request that I'm sending and then feed that request as an input to SQL map. SQL map would automatically figure out what to do and how to get the data from the tables, and it would dump all the data that you need. So yeah, there's that. And that's all about error-based SQL injection. So I guess I'll end the video here. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you like it. If you did like it, please don't forget to leave a thumbs up below and also subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet subscribed. Please turn on the bell icon as well to receive instant updates from my channel. Also do check out Sneak. Try it. It is free to use and it is such an awesome tool for anyone who writes code. You can use my link to get Sneak. The link will be in the description below. So make sure you check it out and try it on your projects. So that's all for this video. I'll meet you in the next one. Until then, cheers.